Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm carrying on with the witnesses for the Casey Anthony trial, and next up is Anthony Lazaro. Casey's boyfriend also goes by the name of Tony. So he and Clint Roy House set up a DJ company and started an event. This company was called DBC Entertainment. They then got the slot on Friday nights at Fusion from June 2008. They now go into how Tony met Casey. He met her on Facebook through a friend request. He saw her, sent her a friend request. They then started speaking to each other through Facebook for a short while. They then met in person at a friend's birthday party. And he believes he knew Casey had a child through Facebook. I mean, this all happened quite quickly. When he saw her at the party, he thought she was a pretty girl. Casey came with two of her friends, and he says he and Casey hit it off. He can't remember what they talked about. Shortly after that, they made plans to see each other again. He then started to see her on a regular basis. Casey would come over to the apartment, but Tony never went to her house, but we later find out that he did once or twice, I think it was. Casey would come over to the apartment a couple of times a week to start with. The first time she brought Kaylee, they went to the pool at the apartment complex. They said this was around the 2nd of June. He said he saw Kaylee a few times. One of the times they went to the mall so he could hand out promotion flyers for his event night at Fusion. He did this on his own while Casey went round the mall with Kaylee. They then met up and had a late lunch and went back to the apartment. Casey and Kaylee then left. Kaylee never spent the night at Tony's apartment, which the other witnesses have said. And that day was the last time he ever saw Kaylee. On the 13th of June, Tony had his showcase event and Casey was there. Tony says it was ultimately the owners that were responsible for the shot girls. Now, you know, the state are going with the theme that Casey thought she was in charge of the shot girls when she actually wasn't. Casey wanted to help out, and Tony told her that he could help out with the shot girls and help keep them in line. Casey had told Tony that she had a job at Universal Studios, something to do with event planning. Casey told him about specific people at her job, like someone called Jeff, but he can't really remember specifics and isn't sure if she ever complained about her job. She didn't tell him where Zanny lived or if she looked after any other children. On the showcase night on the 13th of June, this was the first time Casey went to Fusion with Tony, and they show a picture of them together. Casey went back to Tony's apartment that night and stayed the night, which was the first time she stayed there. After that, Casey began staying more and more and eventually basically moved in. On the 16th of June 2008, Tony saw her late evening that day and they went to Blockbuster Video. They then show the CCTV footage from Blockbuster. Don't know what the point of this is. Neither do the defence, to be honest. It's not like she's using a stolen credit card or anything like that, but Casey was as happy that day as she always was. She never cried or seemed nervous. She didn't tell Tony that Kaylee was missing or that anything had happened. Their relationship was going well and they hadn't had any arguments or disagreements. The following day they spent the day together and stayed in his bedroom. Again, no change in Casey's demeanour and still no mention of where Kaylee was. On the 19th of June, he and Casey went looking for another apartment for Tony as his lease was up soon. He was planning on moving in with his friend Nathan and another friend called Brian. Casey couldn't actually go in and look at the apartment because she didn't have any ID with her. Casey had told Tony that her and Amy were planning on living in her parents' house as they were moving. I think this is news to Casey's parents. Tony had met Amy once at the party he met Casey at because that's who she went there with. On the 20th of June was another event night at Fusion. That was the night of the hot body contest. Casey told Tony she was going to enter the competition. He found it a bit odd, but he was like, yeah, okay. Tony's role was to make sure that nothing got out of hand that night. Like, you know, he was being some kind of security guy. They then show a picture of Casey up on stage or whatever in the contest. He said there was no change in her behaviour and no mention that Kaylee was missing, you know, that she was looking for her, that she was worried. On the 23rd of June, mid-afternoon, Casey called Tony. He was at school to tell him that she'd run out of gas and needed to get picked up. So Tony went to pick her up and she was on a road not far from her house. So when Tony got there, I think he said, do you want to, you know, go to the gas station or whatever? She said, oh no, I've got gas at my house. So they went to her house. There were no other cars at the house and they went to the shed to get gas cans that were in there. And this is the story that Brian Burner told about seeing a man in a car that he'd never seen before. There was a lock on the shed and they had to break into the shed using a tyre iron, and it was Tony that broke into the shed. Tony was worried about doing this, but Casey told him it was fine. They took 2 gas cans out of the shed and put them in Tony's truck. They then drove to where Casey's car was, and Casey emptied the gas cans into the car and then put them in her trunk. And they drove back to Tony's apartment. Tony did find it odd that Casey we're going on to telephone calls now. Sorry, I just read that as if it was the same thing. Tony did find it odd that Casey would go outside to take and make phone calls, but he didn't question it because he figured it was private stuff, especially with her mum. Now, bearing in mind, he's a guy. Guys do not think into things as much as us women do, or, you know, a prosecutor or whatever. They think about something for a minute and then they just move on. It doesn't stick in their head. There was never any change in her behaviour after these phone calls. Casey would also tell him she was going to call the babysitter and would go outside to do that as well. You can't remember any specific arguments Casey had with her mum. 26th of June, Casey spent the day with him just hanging out at the apartment. 27th of June, another occasion where Casey had run out of gas. He went to pick her up. She told Tony that the car had broken down and he offered to take a look, but Casey said her dad would sort it out. They then went back to the apartment. Later they went to the mall. They show CCTV of Tony and Casey there. And Tony says he never saw Casey's car after that. They then went to Fusion that night. Show a picture of them together again. Casey's demeanour was still the same. 30th of June, Tony went back home to New York for a short vacation. Casey drove him and Cameron to the airport as Cameron was going back to where he was from too. Casey drove them in Tony's car and was supposed to drop his car off at the apartment. There was no agreement between Casey and Tony to say that she could use his car while he was away. Casey had told Tony that her dad was going to take care of the car, so, you know, there was no arrangement for her to be using his car. Cross-examination. The attorney starts off by questioning Tony about all the photographs and CCTV footage that has been shown. Basically checking, you know, questioning the relevance of any of them. There's no relevance apart from to show them where he said they were. He asked Tony if Casey had a weapon on her. Did she discuss murder? Did she ask to borrow duct tape? Did she buy any duct tape, chloroform or weapons? No. He does have a point about the relevance of, you know, the photographs and the CCTV, but at the same time, you know, it shows Casey carrying on with life as normal. all the while her daughter being missing or dead. He saw Casey with Kaylee 2 or 3 times. He knew Casey had a daughter before he started seeing her, and he didn't have a problem with it. He liked Kaylee. He says Casey looked after her and loved Kaylee. He says she was a good mother. He did see Casey raise her voice to Kaylee in one incident where Kaylee was going too close to the pool, and Casey would tell her to stop. But Tony says Kaylee loved the pool and Casey was just being a good mum. They then bring up a point of where Casey had told Tony about her dad abusing her, but that point is sustained, so that doesn't come up because there's no proof. Tony would not speak to anyone about what was going on after Casey had been arrested. He wouldn't talk to anyone but law enforcement, not even to the defence, unless it was to give his deposition. He was constantly harassed by the media. He even had to change his phone number numerous times, but he didn't tell the media anything. The first time Casey ran out of gas, Casey never once told Tony to go near her car. He never smelled any foul odour from the car. When Casey opened the trunk, Tony could see the lining in the trunk. And the second time that Casey's car had run out of gas, Tony had said in the testimony to this state, he said it had broken down. It hadn't. It had run out of gas. It was just his wording. Although he did see Casey raise her voice to Kaylee, he did see a lot of affection and laughter between them both. Kaylee loved Dora the Explorer and she could count to 40 in Spanish. He says she was a great little girl. And you can tell at this point that Tony's, getting quite upset about talking about all this. The gas cans they got from the shed didn't have any duct tape on them from what he can remember. Casey told him about the secret. The secret is that she says that George was abusing her before she was arrested, meaning she didn't make it up after. Towards the end, Casey had told him she loved him, and he said the same back to her. They would talk all the time on the phone when they were apart, so much so that if they were talking late at night, Tony would fall asleep talking to her on the phone. He was shocked when he learned about what happened on the 16th of July, and he still is. Being asked about Casey's behaviour before he learned of this is hard for him because it just feels so bizarre. I mean, he was in love with Casey, To learn that she's up for first-degree murder of a daughter must have come as a really big shock. He felt that if she was going to confide in anyone, it would have been him or her parents. The redirect, again, he can't remember if the gas cans had duct tape on them. And I can't remember which witness it is, but we do eventually find out that, well, I do, because I don't know all this, but I do eventually find out the story behind the gas cans and the duct tape. He only saw the rubber lining or the rubber seal around the boot or the trunk door, not actually inside the trunk. The recross, this is just bringing up one of these statements he gave to law enforcement, and they, again, as they did with Brian, got him to close his eyes to try and picture Casey's car and the trunk regarding the smell. But he still said the same thing. He could only see the rubber seal and not actually inside the trunk, and there was no smell. So, an interesting testimony. I think at this point it's going in Casey's favour. Nobody can say anything that bad about her. The only thing that's there is the fact that Casey is doing all this and Kaylee's missing. So I think, but there's still no actual evidence of anything, of Casey doing anything to Kaylee. So I'm starting to see now why she was fine, not guilty. But I think I've got a long way to go, so we'll see. But those are my thoughts on it so far. So until the next video, bye for now.